All right, the Trump administration is intensifying its trade measures, launching national security probes into imports of pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. These investigations could lead to new tariffs on these critical sectors. The government is citing national security concerns as the U.S. relies heavily on foreign production of drugs and chips. The investigations, initiated earlier this month, will trigger a 21-day public comment period. This move follows the president's use of Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, which has already justified tariffs on steel, aluminium, and other goods. Despite some recent reversals, including a delay on auto tariff, Trump is pushing ahead with plans for new levies on pharmaceuticals and chips. The probe into semiconductors and pharmaceutical goods comes at a time when the trade war with China is escalating. U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports have soared, and China has retaliated with its own levies. As the tariff drama unfolds, companies and investors are anxiously awaiting further developments, particularly concerning potential exemptions for certain products. All right, Mr. Raymond Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, is joining us at this point in time. Mr. Vickery, always a pleasure having you, sir. Well, you know, the tariff war between the United States and the rest of the world, has taken a breather or has taken a break for some time, at least 90 days. But when it comes to China, it seems that it's making up for all those international headlines that Trump had against the world as well. What do you think is going to happen between these two countries, considering the fact that the Americans, have this very impressive trade relationship, bilateral relationship with China over the last few decades?
Well, thanks very much for having me. It seems to me that the concentration on China is correct in the sense that China has been a major malefactor in terms of subsidies for exports, in manipulation of labor markets and so forth. However, the way to go about this is with some sort of rule of law, respect for WTO, GATT, and the institutions which have been put into place to handle this. Instead of doing that, the Trump administration has gone back and forth between a concentration on China and a concentration on the whole world. At this point, there is somewhat of a pause because the stock market, the bond market in the United States dipped so precipitously a week or so ago. But we're not out of the woods by any means, and unfortunately, the sledgehammer approach which is being taken by the Trump administration is not conducive to peace and prosperity, either with China in the eastern regions or worldwide. And unfortunately, China is emerging now as the adult in the room, so to speak, of being able to go first to Vietnam and now to Malaysia, as you indicate, President Xi doing that and saying, look, let's have some stability. And of course, stability is what manufacturers, business people want to have, and it's the very opposite of the approach which has been taken by President Trump and his administration.
Well, there is also a pause by the Chinese in terms of importing and trading with important, goods and services. And of course, Boeing is one of, those sufferers, if we can call it that. How is this likely to impact, the trade atmosphere and the exporting atmosphere in the United States as well? This is obviously going to be hitting a lot of bottom lines, which eventually will hurt the approval ratings of Donald Trump.
Well, one would think so, particularly in the Midwest, where agricultural exports, soybeans, pork to China have been so prominent. And those have been solid red states in favor of Trump. And you would think that it would come around now to say, look, let's try some other alternative on this. But the polls in the United States are mixed on this. The Trump hardcore base seems to be holding tight. There is some erosion of his standing, particularly when stock markets dip and 401ks go down. Boeing not being able to sell airplanes. And so what you have is a trade war, and that is not to the benefit of either side in the long run. But on the present trajectory, what is happening is a decoupling between the United States and China. Where this ends depends really, as you had indicated, on whether or not the American public wakes up in terms of providing some constraints in the upcoming midterm elections for the House of Representatives, in state elections such as in Virginia and New Jersey. But the jury is still out on exactly what kinds of constraints are going to be put into place. The third branch of government, the judicial branch in the United States, seems to be willing to kick the can down the road rather than face substantive objections to the Trump approach, and is proceeding just on due process, suits brought in the wrong court, and so forth. So we're not out of the woods in the United States, and the world is not out of the woods from the Trump effect. And the Trump effect thus far has been deleterious. There are people who say, yeah, it'll all work out in the end because these are the art of the deal. But unfortunately, we're doing damage to the systems put in place in the United States and worldwide.
So, do you think that this 90-day pause, it's my surmise, it's my conjecture that this 90-day pause came about because, there was a significant drop in Trump's approval rating. And of course, the bond market, the treasury market in the United States also saw stumbling fortunes. Is this likely to repeat when it comes to this war and this, this back and forth with China as well? Do you think this is only momentary and will subside?
I don't think it's momentary because the system that was put into place after World War II to be able to modify disputes in regard to tariffs, in regard to non-tariff barriers, namely the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, which later became the WTO, is at this point irreparably damaged. And when you get into a system just on a bilateral basis, China versus the U.S., U.S. versus Europe, U.S. and India, the system breaks down because there is no overall mechanism. Now, I do think that the more extreme approach that we saw on April 2nd is going to be modified. That made no sense at all. What it was just taking the trade deficits that the United States had with countries around the world and saying that half of those were illegitimate, caused by the actions of others ripping off the United States. That's what sent the bond market into a tailspin, sent the stock market down, hurt the approval ratings, and so you have a 90-day pause. So I don't think that the extremes on that are going to come back, but I do think the system has been damaged at this point, and the dispute with China, of course, is a major one. We in the United States and China have built up a trade relationship over the years, which is fundamental. You can't go to what we call the big box stores around here, Walmart, Costco, without seeing a lot of cheap Chinese manufactured goods. Now, when people can't get those at those prices and inflation goes up, that's not going to redound to Trump's benefit and is hopefully going to be reined in by the courts and the Congress in the United States. But thus far, we've seen no signs that that's really happening other than a pause. The problem is that the Trump administration has two different objectives. One is to create a fortress America, if you will, and not trade with the rest of the country. We don't need the rest of the world. The rest of the world is ripping it off. At the same time, saying, oh, well, this is just a tactic that will bring countries on both sides to zero tariffs and promote freer trade. Those two goals are incompatible, and the administration is having internal fights back and forth between advisors to Trump as to which path they'll take. So this is a very difficult time, and it's time for countries like India and other major partners of the United States to step up and provide some rationality to what the world trading system needs to get back to.
All right. Mr. Fikri, always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much. Well, Donald Trump has blamed